Hi, friends. This is Dr. Arpita Gupta Dipalma, and you're listening to my podcast, From Pissed Off to Poised. This show is for busy women physicians and professionals just like you who are ready to take control of their emotions while learning how to excel in juggling all the things they are responsible for in life. It's for overextended mamas who are trying to figure out how to work smarter, not harder. It's for multitasking women who are tired of playing the role of the angry and resentful air traffic controller, who simply want to learn how to create a life that is more calm, intentional, and joyful for themselves. My goal is to help you learn how to eliminate the overwhelm and maintain your composure in high-stress situations that you face with the demands in your day-to-day life. Because I get you guys, this was totally me. You are not alone. I invite you to embark on your journey of transformation with me. Enjoy the listen. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of From Pissed Off to Poised. Today we are going to dive into one of my absolute favorite tools for mastering our time optimization, and this is the calendaring process. So it might be a little bit longer than my other episodes, but I felt like it's really important to kind of get some of these key points and strategies in place, and this is going to hopefully really set you up for the beginning of success. And so I know last week we had Erin Hour on the show, and she talked about some of the most popular systems that are available and most well-known, like the Google and the Microsoft and the iCal. And that kind of is the first place where you have to start here. We have to pick a system that works for you, that you will use, that you find maneuverable and easy to work with. And so look into that, like she talked about last week. Do the research, figure out which ones work for your entire family, because you want to be able to share the calendars. You want to be able to put them on the various devices that you use at the house and maybe at the office as well. So you figure that out as your first piece of then being able to then actually build it into the calendar. I gave you a little bit of extra time as well because it takes a while to really come up with that complete brain dump. And so you've had 2 weeks now to really keep adding to that list, to keep dumping the stuff there that we're going to now talk about putting into the calendar today. I know it's hard, and I know that it might have been overwhelming just doing that. And we are taking the steps towards making it a much more seamless and simple process for you. So if you have ever felt like you're constantly running behind, or you can't keep track of all the things in your head, and you're struggling to keep up with your never-ending to-do list, or simply just overwhelmed by the sheer amount of stuff on your plate, this episode is going to be integral for you. So let's talk about how to take care of that to-do list dump that we created last week and actually start turning it into a realistic, more doable plan that you can put on your calendar. This process is all about working smarter, not harder, so you can actually enjoy your time instead of feeling like you're constantly playing catch up. All right, so we're going to do this in a stepwise fashion. So we're going to jump in. We're going to start with step 1. And that is starting with your routine and repetitive events in your life. So this means first and foremost, you got to pick the date and time that you're actually going to do your calendaring process. Okay. And I call it Thursday timeout for me. And I do this at the same time as much as possible every single week. So you want to find a time that makes sense for you to do the Thursday timeout process. And you can call it whatever you want, okay? And you want to honor this commitment as much as possible and plan in advance for slight shifts when you're traveling, or you have work shifts that conflict, or you have any other thing that kind of makes it kind of hard to happen when you regularly plan to do it. Your Thursday timeout time should be a non-negotiable in your life. This is what is going to allow you to know that you always have a home base set up each week for where you're going to get to see the week ahead from a bird's eye view. And so this is what's going to allow you to be more intentional with your planning and make necessary adjustments as well based on your wins and fails with time management from the week before and your current week. And this is what allows you to really start becoming more realistic and more kind to yourself, most importantly. So set that time, look at your calendar, look at your life, figure out the best time that you can actually sit down each week for an hour to do the calendaring process. That's number 1. The next thing with regards to these repetitive or routine events is to plug in the other non-negotiables for the following week. And so what do I mean by non-negotiables? I mean, number one, your me time or your free time, the time that you need for yourself to rest and recharge. I always tell everybody put this in first because if you don't do it, it automatically gets cannibalized. It doesn't happen. So we have to honor the commitment to ourselves to put ourselves first and put ourselves on our schedule and then honor that commitment. Other non-negotiables are your work shifts. All right. Maybe for you, meal prep and meals. That was super important for me. I wanted to make sure that we were sitting down together as a family every night as much as possible to eat dinner together. And so therefore, I planned my Thursday time out around planning my meals, planning my grocery shopping, et cetera, et cetera. That was my kind of sentinel event each week that I rotated around. Other non-negotiables are weekly meetings, maybe at the office or with other people that are important in your life. Other one-off appointments, maybe with physicians or, your massage therapist, et cetera, et cetera. Your bedtime. Can you start to implement a routine and somewhat regular bedtime so you're able to recharge with your regular rest? And maybe even your workouts, your physical activity. How do we build these things in? So the key here is to figure out what you want to be your non-negotiables and putting those in first. These are all going to be things that are part of your rhythm that you are maybe having trouble honoring right now. So what we're going to do is put them in first in spots that work, maybe around the work shifts, so that you can start to build that commitment and honor those times. These are the foundations of your schedule. So if you don't put them in first, you're going to find yourself constantly trying to squeeze them in later. And this is what begins to grow that feeling of you're not being able to trust yourself and the lack of recharging and refilling our cup and doing those things that are important to us, for us, will eventually lead to burnout. Okay, so that's why it's super important to put this in first. You might also want to take a minute to think about what are the things that you're labeling as have-tos versus want-tos, i.e., what things are you making out to be non-negotiables, but they really aren't non-negotiables, i.e., I got asked at the last minute to bake 100 cupcakes for the bake sale at school. Are we making that a have-to or a want-to? All right. Maybe meetings at work that you really don't need to participate in. Maybe social obligations that are not in alignment for you. So notice what you're calling a have to versus a want to, and what really truly is a non-negotiable. I'm going to say it with emphasis again. Okay. We get to decide who and what we give the privilege of our time to. No one is entitled to our time. So I want you to reflect on where you are giving it currently, and if you want to continue to do so. The first few weeks of doing this process, or anytime you start a new routine or regular task, you're going to have a learning curve with that, okay? And you're going to need to give yourself some grace so you can see what worked and what didn't work. So I want you to notice what tasks took longer than expected and why. And I want you to notice which tasks actually took less time than you were expecting and afforded you some unscheduled minutes back. For the former, i.e., took longer than you were thinking, how can you give yourself more space for that task to make it more doable, realistic, and honestly just relaxed? All right. A lot of times we dread doing stuff because we feel the pressure and the urgency of having to get it done, and it's not enough time. It's not realistic or kind. For the latter example, where you've afforded yourself some extra minutes that you weren't counting on or you didn't expect, do you really want to make adjustments here? Or do you want to really relish that little unexpected burst of free time and keep that in place? All right, you get to decide here. You also want to be on to yourself that you're not doing that everywhere in your life, but sometimes a little extra bonus time to rest and breathe never hurts anybody. I want you to remember to ask yourself, do I really need to have all of this pressure and urgency in my day, or can I create a little more breathing room to be a little bit more kind and compassionate towards myself? Because we know you're doing a lot. So I'm going to give you a pro tip with this, and I kind of mentioned it in the intro, right? But I want you to consider color coding these events on your calendar to make it a really easy, quick reference for you visually. So for example, pick a color for each category. So maybe blue for self-care, green for work meetings, red for urgent deadlines. I have personally a very colorful calendar because each family member has their own color. Each business has its own color, and my types of tasks have their own color. So for example, anything having to do with our house, like repairmen coming, maintenance visits, reminders for annual services, those are colored brown. My personal calendar, my personal appointments and meetings are purple. My podcast calendar, light purple. My coaching company is dark blue. My medical office calendar is yellow. My real estate calendar is gray. All right. And I can select to view only one calendar at a time or any number of calendars at the same time. So it makes it easy to see what's coming up in one particular area if I need to see it that way. And it's easy for me and my eye to find something on the fly related to one specific area if needed. So that's kind of a pro tip. Try to find a way to color code your calendars that makes sense to you so it makes it easy to find things. That was just step one, guys. So this is, like I said, it's going to be a hefty, jam-packed episode. Step two, I want you to schedule your focus time. And I mentioned me time in the first step. This is a little bit different. Focus time is a game-changing concept, in my opinion. This is where I want you to set aside 1 to 2 hours a day, 2 to 3 times a week for deep, uninterrupted work. This is also what I want you to reference maybe as your visionary time, the space where you're in your zone of genius to think, to brainstorm, to create, to finalize, and complete your most important projects. This can lead to so many levels of creativity and production because we don't oftentimes give ourselves the time to simply sit and brainstorm and think. So when we do this, when we gift ourselves this time to do just that, it is absolutely mind-blowing. So I personally suggest giving yourself at least 1 hour of think time each week that allows you to just be the visionary, to do that thinking and the brainstorming. I like to say a lot that we can't be the visionaries and the worker bees. So you have to set time aside intentionally for this. And this is what opens up the flow of our creative juices. All in all, focus time is not the time to check emails, scroll on social media, or get distracted by other minor tasks like laundry or letting the dog out. So if you find yourself getting easily distracted, you may want to make it even harder on yourself to do so. For me, my best focus time is early in the morning after everybody has left the house. My brain is clear, my energy is high, and I can knock out major tasks in this time. I turn off all my notifications, I set a do not disturb on my phone or put it in focus mode for work, and I commit to getting those things done within the time that I've allotted for it. The key here is deciding that your project or your task is going to be finished in that specific window of time. We're not going to suck it up. We're not going to drag it out with that perfectionism. We are just focusing on results. So pencils down when the time is up, and then we can go back later and refine it later when we maybe calendar a little bit more time for that. I'm going to touch more on our perfectionism tendencies and how we can combat that in another upcoming episode. And another pro tip here, if your focus time gets interrupted, I want you to try chunking your work time in focused 25-minute sprints. I mean, if you find yourself getting distracted easily within that focus time, or you find yourself having a hard time sitting, chunk it into 20 or 25-minute sprints, and then give yourself a 5-minute break to go do a simple task in the house or pick up on whatever is itching you to take care of, okay? This is going to help you keep your brain engaged while avoiding that burnout and fatigue and just kind of like daydreaming that is not productive for you, as long as you can allow the urge to be distracted for more than 5 minutes to just be there without acting on it. Okay, so notice when you want to go pick up that phone or get up and check your email and then just say, okay, there it is again. I'm just going to allow that urge to be there to do it, but not act on it. All right, step 3, I want you to put in some pop-off blocks in your schedule. So what are pop-off blocks? Pop-off blocks are essentially space with nothing in it because we know shit comes up every single day. As my director of operations for our medical office will tell you, life happens. Fires pop up. Emergencies seem to always come out of nowhere. And most, maybe annoyingly or frantically, this seems to happen every single day, no matter how well we try to plan in advance. So instead of letting them derail your entire day, we want to build in these pop-off blocks. And this is scheduled time specifically for handling the unexpected. And depending on why and how often you have these show up for you, you may need to build them in on a daily basis. And you can do this 1 hour a day, or maybe 2 to 3 hours a week, once or twice a week. You get to figure out what works best for you based on the patterns that you see in your life. So when something urgent comes up, you now have a plan. You don't have to lose your mind trying to figure out when you're going to do it. I want you to consider this process when something urgent is presented to you. Number one, if it's truly urgent, you can shift what you're currently working on in that time slot to the pop-off block and address the emergency. And then number two, with whatever's presented to you, if it's not truly urgent, you can wait and decide to put that item in your pop-off block and address it then. This gives you a pause before reacting, and it helps you differentiate the urgent, which is I must do this now or somebody's going to die type of thing, versus the important, which it needs to get done, but it can be scheduled for later. Sometimes it's just the nature of the beast in your specific line of work that tends to come with the daily fires, i.e., running this busy medical practice with a hefty in-house procedural component and a research arm and other service lines and managing all the people, blah, blah, blah. Okay? It's part of the job. Part of my medical office is the fact that you are going to probably have daily fires. But I will add that if you're finding yourself having endless fires every single day, all the time, and you notice that it may be due to other gaps in honoring your schedule or workflow, this may all need to be revamped in totality and restructured all together because something isn't working. The key to succeeding in all of this work is being honest with yourself regarding where you may be having trouble honoring the commitments that you have made. Where do you find yourself procrastinating because you just don't feel like working on something right now, even though it's on your calendar? The trickle-down effect from this can be those repeated fires that happen over and over and over. So I want you just to notice that, and we're going to talk more about procrastination again in another episode. So the pro tip here is using that simple decision-making matrix. There's one called an Eisenhower matrix, and I'll put that link in the show notes as well. But this is how we can kind of decipher the priority level, the urgency of having to complete tasks as they come to us. So in just kind of quick summary for how the Eisenhower matrix works, if a task is both urgent and important, it's probably best for you to go ahead and do it right now. If it's important but not urgent, you can schedule it for a later time that works for you. Now, if it's urgent but not important, you can delegate it to somebody else. This needs to get done, but I am the visionary. This is more of a worker bee thing. I'm going to give it to somebody else to do. And then if it's neither, it's not urgent and not important, I'm going to offer that you can probably eliminate it. So like I said, I'm going to add this link to the matrix into the show notes so that you can kind of look at it and watch this little video clip that I have that might help you there as well. All right, step 4, we're going to plug in all the remaining tasks. All right, so now that you've done step 1 through 3, you should have a basic foundational calendar. It's kind of like the skeleton of your calendar of non-negotiables and things that you have put in to have a basic daily and weekly routine. Now that this foundation is set, I want you to go back to your brain dump that we did, and I want you to focus on the top 3 priorities that you identified in that brain dump. And I want you to take them in order and one at a time, assign each task under the top priority to a specific time in your calendar. Okay, so we dumped out everything in our brain. We picked the top 3 priorities. Any of the other tasks that fell under those top 3 priorities, I wanted you to categorize that under there. And so now with those top 3, get the very most important one, the top one, and we're going to focus on putting that in your calendar. I want you to be realistic. I don't want you to overload yourself here. So for example, if a task typically takes you 45 minutes, don't give yourself 20 or 30. Give yourself 45 or an hour. If you've never done a certain task before, consider giving yourself a little bit of extra time at the beginning until you kind of get into that routine and the flow. This is how you can plan to set yourself up for success. And again, be kind to yourself. All right, an extra little strategy here. I want you to try to think about the tasks that you have in your calendar for the week when you're doing your Thursday timeout and see if you can batch similar tasks together. So if you need to make multiple phone calls, can you do them all in one block of time rather than scattering them all throughout your day or week even? I knock out a lot of my to-do list items this way, and I feel very efficient about getting them out of the way. This morning, I made 10 calls to different contractors and got things set up and done for house stuff. And it was awesome rather than trying to fit them in here and there throughout my week whenever I had an extra spare moment. Another example with this is bunching my bills. Okay. I am the type of person that I still want to review all of my bills before I pay them, because what I've noticed is it takes more and more time to correct the errors from the vendors because everybody's multitasking and making errors. And so it's more likely for me to find bills that have errors in them. And when I pay the bills with auto pay like that, it takes me more time to get the money back when it's not in my favor. So I still review my bills, and I don't tend to sign up for auto pay automatically. So what I want you to do is think about maybe how your bills get managed throughout the month. When my bills start to come in, I start bunching them, and rather than paying them as they come in like I used to, I bunch them into groups. So I do it once a week or every other week, just depending on the due dates and how many have come in. This way, I'm gathering all of these invoices, the spreadsheets, the payment records, the online banking access, passcodes, all that stuff. All of it takes time. So I'm doing it all at one time, once a week or once every other week. And this allows me to focus on the accounting with more attention to detail and not waste time over and over logging in, accessing, pulling the bank balances, all those things. So batching similar tasks together really does save you time. So consider how you can start doing that. All right, step 5. It's okay to push non-urgent tasks to the next week or the next month, and maybe even the next year. Not everything has to get done yesterday or today or this week. So going back to that Eisenhower matrix, if a task isn't urgent, I want you to schedule it for the next week. And even then, when you start filling in the next week, if you find it to get too full, think about what things you can take from that week and move it another week out, or maybe 2 weeks out. This is in the beginning as we start doing this. And this is not in perpetuity. All right. This is how we're going to first start for the first couple of weeks as we get into the groove of how our calendars are going to work. When you do this, it keeps your current week manageable, and it helps prevent that feeling of always falling behind, that you are never on time or on task. We have a tendency, or at least I know I did, to have this feeling that I could not rest until all of my to-do list was completed. And then I realized that I was really being so unkind to myself because, of course, this was completely unrealistic. And for me, my thought was you can rest when you get everything done. And inevitably, it would be midnight, and I was just maybe ticking the last box, and there was no time for rest. I had to go to bed and wake up and start the next day all over again. And this is when I started to realize that I was trying to accomplish way more than was realistic in a day. And I wasn't being kind to myself, but rather I was beating myself up when I wasn't able to even get it all done. I wasn't even acknowledging that I wasn't being kind to myself, much less realistic. So when I started to test this system by letting myself not do one of the items on my daily list to see if anyone noticed or if there were any repercussions from that, I realized it wasn't a big deal. Nobody noticed. There were no big fires that came up because of it. I started to realize that I was the one who was creating all of the urgency for the unreasonable deadlines to get things done. So this is where you can also ask yourself, does this task need to be done today, right now, or this week? Or can I push it out some where I have more breathing room and not suffer from the sequelae of cramming it all in to my current day or week? This is how we start to give ourselves space. We can schedule it out depending on the deadlines, depending on what things need to be done when. All right, step 6 is to celebrate what you have accomplished, okay? And as physicians, we don't do this. As high-functioning women, we don't do this. As mamas, we don't do this because we're so busy trying to take care of all of the things that need to get done. So the following week, at your second Thursday timeout, at the end of that week, I want you to sit down and take a moment to acknowledge what all you actually got done. So every Thursday timeout, look back at the week and pat yourself on the back, do a little dance, look at all the things that you did accomplish, because it is a shit ton and we don't give ourselves enough credit for it. We tend to focus on what's still left to do, but when we celebrate our wins, it helps us build momentum. We have a really hard time doing this because we're so task focused. We tend to check that box and move on to the next thing. And even when we reach some of our big ass goals, we don't often truly celebrate it and appreciate the accomplishments we have made. So even when you're making progress, I want you to consider that that also deserves recognition. It's not just reaching the goals, it's the progress that you're making each and every week. So spend that intentional moment on this each week before you begin to plan out the next. A little bonus pro tip on this. Think about keeping a wins journal. All right. This was also a kind of a mini aha game changer moment for me. And what a wins journal is a simple list of the things that you have accomplished each week or month. And this really is to help reinforce the positive habits that you are trying to put in place. And it keeps you very much so motivated. At least it does for me. What I noticed, especially when I started this business, is that I felt like I was always hustling and always doing a lot of work, but I really didn't have any fruits to show for it. I would think back to, well, like, what did you actually do? And sometimes I would beat myself up thinking you really didn't do that much. And so my coach at that time suggested that I start keeping this wins journal. And I did this once a month to remind myself of the things that I was doing to grow my business while I was still in that launch phase, because the wins felt more rare and I wasn't always able to kind of verbalize or pinpoint what all I had actually done. So I was doing this. And she also suggested to me that I should limit myself to making maybe 4 offers or 4 pitches max each month, because honestly, I was already juggling so many other things. Okay. I had the medical office, the kids, the house, all the different things. And you know what was funny is that I discovered when I started doing this month after month is that I was making on average 5 to 10 different offers a month about sharing with my people and my partners and my colleagues and the people that I felt I could help about my new entity and what I was doing. Writing those offers down, who I was reaching out to, who I was telling about my business, who I was making pitches to, really helped me remind myself of all the things I was actually doing. Because, like I said, as high achievers, we tend to have the false belief that we're never doing enough. So I highly suggest that you keep a wins journal, because every step you take towards your goal counts as a win that you need to remember. So those are the nitty-gritty steps, okay? Steps 1 through 6 of doing the Thursday timeout, getting started, putting this process in place. And I know it was probably a little tedious. You might have to go back and listen a couple of times. I really, really am excited about having you guys start with this. My personal story with Thursday timeout, I want to tell you how it worked for me. Because when I started doing this, I was constantly frustrated. I mean, I've always done a calendaring system of some sort my entire life. But despite doing that, I felt like that there wasn't ever enough time and I was always chasing my tail. And when I started making these small shifts above about, committing to my schedule first, putting me as a priority first on my schedule and blocking out that focus time, giving myself a little bit more breathing room for the unexpected, factoring in travel time or just time for grace, everything started to shift. I was a badass calendar person before, but I became so much better with making these little adjustments that were simply being more realistic and kind to myself. So now I no longer end my days feeling frazzled. Even though I may not know exactly what's coming, which it's not really true now because I've got it all planned out, I do have the bandwidth to handle things more effectively than before whenever a crisis does arise. I actually have more space for myself to think, to troubleshoot and create, and most importantly, to enjoy my life. The urgency is not as prevalent, and you can do it too. So your action step this week is go calendar your to-do list. Okay. Follow these steps we talked about above, give yourself grace and start experiencing what it feels like to be in control of your time instead of feeling like time is always controlling you. As an example and a nugget, and to end today's show, I'm just going to tell you about why I do it the way I do. And maybe this will resonate with you, and maybe this is not the best thing for you, but it gives you an idea of why. So as I mentioned, I really wanted to make sure that I was spending time with my kids each and every day, and that meant doing dinners together as much as possible. And obviously, when they were younger, this was not a big deal. But as they got older and sports and activities and all the things, it really became more of a challenge that we had to be very intentional about in order to have that time together. But part of what had made it a little bit easier is that this was a habit that we had had in place since they were little. So I knew that my Thursday timeout needed to be focused around my grocery shopping, quite frankly, because my grocery shopping, I hate grocery shopping, honestly. And so I do it once a week. I don't want to go to that place more than once a week unless I absolutely have to. And my meal planning was going to revolve around the times of grocery shopping to make sure I had what I need. So on Thursday evenings, I sit down and I plan out my Thursday timeout calendar for the following week. And I look at my schedule now in the evenings. So sometimes I do group coaching in the evenings. Sometimes I have other meetings or events in the evenings where I don't always have as much time to cook the way I want. And so this is allowing me to make quicker meals or fast meals, or even sometimes have grace and say, we're going to do takeout this night because everybody's kind of juggling around, but I want to be together. It's allowed me to plan my meals for the following week for the nights that I'm cooking and make the grocery list at the same time so that on Friday morning, that's my day to go get groceries. I run to the store. I have my entire list ready for the entire week. I get it all done at one time. I have my stuff together and we go home, put them away in the fridge, in the pantry, all the things. And I don't have to worry about it again till the following Thursday. This is such a relief for me because, like I said, I hate going to the grocery store. And one of my most important values was to be together with my kids as much as possible when they were home and have the meal planning done and do it in a way that's kind and realistic. It kept me from having to scramble and figure out what we're going to eat every night. It kept me from scrambling and having junk food every night. It just allowed me to build a little bit more intentionality in my life around a thing that was super, super important to me. So that is an example of why my Thursday timeout is on Thursday evenings and allows me to be intentional for the entire week that follows. I would love to see what you guys do with this. I want to hear how this process, as you start doing it, is working for you. If you have challenges or struggles that you're having trouble overcoming, feel free to DM me and reach out. I would love to help you with it. This is one of my most fun little puzzles to solve, and I just really enjoy it. So keep the conversation going with me. Until next time, I want to encourage you to do this for yourself. You are going to build more spontaneity and time and intentionality for yourself as you begin to honor your commitments that you're making. All right, we will see you next week. Take care. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of From Pissed Off to Poised. Remember, transformation is a journey, not a destination. So enjoy the ride. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review From Pissed Off to Poised on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback supports my mission to get this podcast out to help other women physicians and professionals like you on their path to creating a more peaceful life with more intention and more joy. I enjoy reading every message I get with your input and feedback on my journey, so keep them coming. And if you have a friend who might enjoy the listen, please share this episode and share with them. Lastly, if you want to learn more about my coaching programs and course offerings, check out my website at www.thoughtworkmd.com. Feel free to reach out to me to learn more about investing in yourself through one-to-one coaching so you can start living the life you've always wanted. This show is for general educational and entertainment purposes only. Life coaching is not a substitute for therapy or medical treatment.